Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nigel Ridpath, and I'll be running today's session along with our friend Eoin Fahy. And the topic for today is really looking at what is going on in the AI market at the moment, and putting some thoughts together around go-to-market offerings that are winning out there in the Microsoft customer ecosystem. And then we will finish up by looking at how you can um, transition your team to take advantage of some of those opportunities. So we've got quite a lot to crack through. Do put questions in the Q&A. We have people on standby looking at that, which we'll come to at the end. But we're going to crack straight on. So what we're going to be talking about today is the market, the technology. I know you probably all will have been you will either be across this or you've heard Microsoft talk about it many times, but and as many times as Microsoft have talked about it, they've changed the name of product. So Owen's going to give us a little recap about the current Microsoft AI technology marketplace. I'm then going to look at what I think are the 10 key offers that we're seeing will meet what the market needs right now. And then Owen's going to round off with looking at how to transition your practice. So the reason we're holding this today is because we keep hearing these sorts of statements from Microsoft's partners. Um, we're finding some partners are forging ahead, and but many are not really sure about where to place their investments, and that's really what this session is about today. Um, and in true Ochre style, we are listening to what Microsoft has to say about this, but also bringing our own independent view of what's going on in the marketplace, what's going on, for instance, outside the Microsoft realm that we might want to take advantage of, um, and really doing this as a market-led approach rather than a technology-led approach. Um, So these are the things we're hearing, which is, as I say, I wouldn't be surprised if a number of you on this call have some of these similar questions about this arena yourself. So I am charged within the Ochre Group to keep an eye on the AI marketplace. So as I say, this is not looking at it from Microsoft's perspective. This is looking at it in terms of what's going on and what's being needed. And there's certainly a fair bit of alignment with what Microsoft are telling us, but I think there are some things that we can finesse around that, and one or two areas that we might want to add. So this is what we're seeing right now, and I'm really talking about the early stages of 2026. Even 6 months ago, what the market was looking for was a bit different to where it is today. And then no doubt if we were to do this webinar again after the summer, we will probably be changing it a bit, such is the nature of this market at the moment. And I guess that's one thing as Microsoft partners that we have to bear in mind. Are we making investments of something that may actually only have value in the marketplace for 6 to 12 months? Now, that if the investment is relatively small and the opportunity is quite big, that might be worth doing. But if the opportunity is relatively narrow, and it's not going to be around very long, and certainly if the investment in getting to the point of being able to deliver that capability is high, then then that's less attractive. I've kept this to the position as we see it today, really looking at what customers are actually trying to achieve with AI in the next 12 months, and crucially, what they're willing to pay for. So this is what happen. This is what's happening out there in the marketplace at the moment. As I say, there is definitely some overlap between what we're hearing from Microsoft and this. There are really four key outcomes driving spend in this area. There's productivity under constraint for all sorts of reasons. Not least the political choices that have been made in the last year or two. The hiring has become a lot more expensive, and people are looking at what they can do from a productivity point of view. I'm not making a political statement here. It's just a fact. Productivity is a key driver for people spending on AI at the moment. The second thing is about decision quality and speed. What we're seeing in some industries is that traditional players in those industries are being threatened by new entrants that have been born in the AI world, because they're managing to achieve capability, cost effectiveness, and scale very, very quickly. And so there are one or two industries where people are having to react to competition from new entrants, and decision quality and speed is something that they're looking at to counteract that. The next thing, and I think this is an area that I'm not sure we would necessarily have focused on a year ago, but it's this customer experience at scale. We've all heard the horror stories of organizations who've opened up AI to their customers, or even the whole world, in terms of it being on their website, and hallucinations happening. Some of you will remember the example of the firm in the States, a car leasing firm, where people on their public-facing chatbot managed to get it to write rude poems about their company. This sort of thing is obviously highly risky if you get it wrong, but very high benefit if you can get it right. And I think we're at the stage with being able to prompt with guardrails that a lot of organizations are looking at either behind an authorization, so maybe it's for their own customers who have a login to a certain area of their site, that they're being able to properly interact with AI-based chatbots, or even on their public site, that the chatbots are now being trusted more broadly. I don't know about you, but I've been on a number of sites recently where the chat is still fairly rudimentary, and they're not letting it off the leash much. But I really believe that within the next 12 months, this will be one of the major areas of change. And then the risk and compliance side, the safe use of AI is going to be critical, and people are going to be spending money on that. So as a result of that, these are the sort of things in the Microsoft world that customers are buying. And I'm not going to go through those in detail, but what I will is highlight is the kind of quote on the right, which I think sums up what customers of Microsoft AI technologies are thinking at the moment. So the winners will be the partners who can make AI usable and safe, not just possible. So it's not you can produce an agent. It's about how is that usable, and most importantly, how is it going to produce answers that we can rely on. And it's that second bit that has been as a result of some poor AI implementations, or even not implementations, but proof of concepts that have happened over the last year. So how do we get these guardrails in place? There are some blockers to people moving forward with AI investments. But the good news for everybody on this call is that they're fairly predictable, that there are these four areas, and all of them can make us money. In fact, in some cases, these blockers are more valuable than the AI projects that might result in the end. So there is an adoption paralysis. We know that the tech changes so quickly, but the question is, what outcome are you going to try and achieve, and how can we do that quickly and effectively, and get you some value now? Even if we throw that away in 6 months and rebuild that in new technology. So there's definitely something here that, rather than people doing nothing until the tech stabilizes, which in my view it won't, it will continue to change quickly. The point is about how to get value quickly, and almost in a disposable fashion, because what's impossible today is going to be very easy in 12 months. We all know that the data to train models often doesn't exist. It isn't usable, or it's in an amorphous blob, and we can't work out which bit should be used and which one shouldn't. We've all got SharePoint installations with 5 versions of the same document. How do we work out which of those is the version that we ought to be using for our training sets? Governance gaps. I'll just rattle through these last two. This is what I was talking about in terms of opening it up to end customers, is making organizations very nervy, but there are things we can do about that. And then finally, there's no operating model for this new world. All of these things are stopping AI investments, but they're all things where you can be putting offerings together, which you can monetize. So finally, and you will get these slides afterwards, I've broken this down by market segment as to what it is that they're most looking for at the moment, what's stopping them, and what they'll fund. So I'm not going to dwell on that right now, but you will be getting these in the slides. So in summary, on this section, it's not about getting people excited about this area anymore. It's about execution, it's about safety, it's about making sure that you can get quick wins out of the technology that you may well go into thinking that it will be disposable, replaced, or seriously enhanced in a few months' time, but actually you're still getting benefit out of it in the short term. So I think at that point, let's get Eoin to take over and just give us a reminder about the latest um, uh, the latest offerings from Microsoft.
Yeah, thanks, Nigel, and hey there, everyone. I'd hoped to give an intro at the top of the call, but actually, when Nigel played that lovely video, my entire laptop crashed and I was kicked off the meeting. So there was about 7 minutes of me panicking frantically behind the scenes, hoping I'd be able to get back on. I am here. I've braved turning on my video, so hopefully that stays on. But just by way of introduction, my name is Eoin, pronounced the Irish way, but or spelt the Irish way, pronounced the Owen way. Um, I've worked in Microsoft for 10 and a half glorious years in a partner development capacity and then in a sales capacity, working directly with end customers and bringing partners in there. And recently I've gone out on my own and set up my own business, and I'm working closely with the team in Oka. What I want to talk you through today is just a little bit of a level set in terms of the Microsoft Copilots in inverted commas. And this isn't an exhaustive overview of the capabilities, but it's just to give you an idea of, say, from simple out of the box to advanced and highly customized solutions, what they are, when you use them, and some key considerations if you want to kind of bake these into your business model. Now, for some of you, this may be new. For some of you, this will be a refresh, and for some of you, this will be teaching stuff you already know. But the purpose is just Nigel's looking at the kind of the macro level view of this is where the market is, this is what the customers are demanding. We're just going to take it back down to the basics of, and these are the solutions that Microsoft has created that will then build solutions around, or partners will build solutions around to take to market to address those kind of broader needs. So if we just look at this kind of continuity map, we have here from the out of the box solutions right up to the more kind of heavily engineered ones. And again, Copilot Chat is the natural starting point for most organizations. It comes free in inverted commas with the M365 licensing, and it operates as a secure general purpose AI assistant to combat the likes of a ChatGPT. As customers move on, they generally move on to M365 Copilot, formerly known as Copilot for M365. And this is similar to Copilot Chat, but embedded in M365 or Microsoft 365 that allows them to use the organizational data. A really common use case is recording Teams meetings, for example. Then, as we move forward, you then have Copilot Studio, which comes with a higher degree of sophistication and customization, which allows customers or partners to create kind of a platform for creating agents and assistants to work in the flow of work or the workflow of end customers. And then finally, we have Azure AI Foundry, which doesn't have the name Copilot, but is very much part of that family. And that's more for a heavily developer weighted platform to create completely customized models. And you may be asking, well, when would I use any of these solutions at a high level? Copilot Chat is very much a customers starting out in their journey. They possibly haven't defined exactly what they want to do, but they actually need to combat shadow AI, because if you don't give your user something, they'll go out and find something else. So they're typically already licensed for Copilot Chat, so it's a really good starting point. From a partner perspective, there's little monetization opportunity there because it's very much a you enable it and off you go. There may be end user training, but really where you want to move towards is you're on Copilot Chat, but how do we help that reason over your data and boost productivity with the M365 Copilot? Once they're using that, or perhaps you could even skip that step if they're looking at how they could embed AI assistants and agents into the flow of their work. For example, help desk agents, employee onboarding agents to automate, repeatable processes. You can look at how can we use Copilot Studio to create those custom agents, perhaps integrating with third-party platforms like in an onboarding capacity with the HR system or something like ServiceNow for provisioning, workloads. And then finally, if you want to look at building more, highly customizable agents, or highly customizable AI platforms, you can then look at Azure AI Foundry. And this can bring in kind of a wealth of data. There's really the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do. But with that, it brings a lot more engineering, capabilities required to invest in that. And then just finally, just in terms of some of the key considerations that if you're wondering what is appropriate at the right time for the right customer, the key thing to note of Copilot Chat is not to belittle it, but it's relatively basic in terms of what it is. It is an AI assistant, really could compete to ChatGPT, but it can't access organizational data. If you're looking at deploying M365 Copilot or Microsoft 365 Copilot, a key thing to consider, and this is a monetization opportunity, you need to think about the use case and the ROI that the customer will achieve, but you also need to think about the security and governance of what they're deploying. Microsoft 365 Copilot requires permission and governance setup so that the customer can use it without, accidentally oversharing or over provisioning data in their organization. That creates complexity, but in that complexity creates services for partners. If you're looking at deploying, say, Copilot Studio, you just need to be really clear in terms of, what are the boundaries of what it can and can't reach, and ensure that you limit inconsistent or risky automations. So, for example, are you allowing it to modify existing files, or are you allowing it to do something that perhaps may cause risk to your organization, and looking at how you can prevent that happening. And then finally, looking at Azure AI Foundry, it's the most complicated in terms of engineering and governance requirements, because it's a fully kind of platform as a service based model versus, say, Copilot Chat and M365 Copilot, which are more SaaS based. With that, you are beholden to ensure that it is, built, well governed, and all the data pipelines work effectively. But again, with that, it does come with, increased complexity, comes with, generally speaking, increased profitability. So look, that may be news to much of you, that may be going over old ground, but we just wanted a baseline on that before we hand back over to Nigel and he goes through the offerings that partners can begin to build around this.
Thanks, Eoin. So I've synthesized the what we think the market requires in the next 12 months with the technologies that are there. And we've come up with 10 offerings that we're just going to talk through very quickly. And again, you'll get these slides so you can look at this in a bit more detail after the call. But these are the 10 AI offers as I see them that map to those real UK buying needs. So the first is looking at a security and governance starter pack. So this is about policy, controls, ownership, auditability to ensure safe AI use. A lot of customers just don't know where to start with that. So an offering that can be taken to market that ensures that those guardrails are defined is, I think, a great starter offering. The second thing is actually looking at the data access and permissioning. So once you've worked out your security and governance policies, looking at the information that the M365, so the second pillar of Eoin's tech continuum, looking at what can be seen across SharePoint, Teams, and M365 more generally, looking at permissions, sensitivity, how you're going to find it. Do you want to create a new SharePoint structure that you point your Copilot chat to look at, that is curated in some way? Anyway, there's definitely an offering around that. Then we're looking at workflow automation and integration quick wins. So this is building on those of you who might have Power Platform backgrounds. So this is looking at Power Automate and how you might use Copilot Studio to use AI behind some of those automations. And these are usually quick wins. Just a little sidebar on Power Automate and using Copilot Studio alongside it. To me, there is no point getting into Copilot Studio and AI decisions when the automation route is very determinative. So if you know that if this field is X and this field is Y, then the answer is always do this, then Power Automate has been great for that for 10 years. You don't need to introduce AI into that conversation. If the answer is not as easily led by that sort of rule, then there may well be an area for bringing Copilot Studio in. But getting those automation and integration quick wins is definitely an offering that the market needs right now. As Copilot readiness and value assessments, we're seeing quite a number of partners doing these now. They definitely map onto what the market is needing. It's about selecting the use cases, defining success measures, and having those guardrails. So moving on to 5 to 8. By the way, you might notice these are all getting a little more heavy and a little more advanced, but I'll sum these up at the end. So the fifth one is it's either Dynamics or it could be any other line of business looking at augmenting the productivity of line of business applications. So these are things like summaries, next best action, knowledge servicing, that sort of thing. We're finding that is really hitting some of the needs out there in the market. So 6 I've touched on before, which is actually getting to the point where customer service AI, either behind authentication or in front of it, is getting to the point now where people can really push the envelope in terms of what they're doing with those. They can be immensely productive and immensely helpful to the end customer. And I think that this is going to be one of the single biggest areas of growth this year in the AI arena. 7, we talked about the data being in a good state, ready for AI. I heard it stated recently, every AI project is a data project, and I think that's completely true. And having data that is trustworthy and usable, having it so that that we know about gaps, we know that inaccuracies have been fixed, all of that sort of thing is a big part of the offerings that that the market needs right now. And then we're getting into agents and orchestration, but with humans in the loop. So these are multi-step agents, so they require orchestration that can work through a particular problem and do certain actions, but typically there is somebody with somebody who's involved in the final decision making rather than complete autonomy. The last two map onto real customer need at the moment, but we're not seeing that many partners getting to this level of sophistication. So industry package solutions, so these are actual packaged offerings that have been trained or could be trained on customer data that automate various processes, but they are ones that can be that have a high level of repeatability. And the last one, which I almost haven't seen anyone do at all, is imagine you're a customer who is going through a data project to get their data into a state where they can train models off the back of it. But in reality, that's going to take 2 years, and you don't want to wait. I think that there is a need for people who can go into organizations and have proprietary data or pre-trained models that can be used as a pro tem proxy for the customer's own data. And there are very few Microsoft partners who are in a position to be able to offer that. But I do think that with the length that it's going to take to get data into a sufficiently good format to train AI models, anyone who can offer this, particularly in a verticalized way, or in a horizontal way, actually, could be well ahead of the game. So these are the 10 offers I think map onto need at the moment. And what I've done, just a reminder, you are going to get these slides if this is a bit small at the moment, or you don't have time to take it in. I think there are 4 offers which don't take much investment, or you may have the skills already to do it. So you can look those up on the, they're actually the first 4 of these items, and we're seeing quite a lot of partners doing those now. These next 3 are ones that start taking things into a slightly more sophisticated, bigger project realm, with the last 3 being what I would call big bets. So if you start anywhere, it should be with these 4. You should be looking at beginning to build capability for these 3, and then you have to really make investment decisions about these in the long term. The size of the bubble is roughly my view of the deal size against market need. But I also wanted to put in here the capability stretch. For most partners, these things up here are not too difficult. Get over on this side and you've got big opportunity, but it's quite a stretch for most existing partners. I've got 2, just very quickly, there's 2 sales ladders that I've built out. These are going to be different for different organizations and where they're going to start. But I think in the absence of anything else, I think these are useful. So for new business, if I was to look at looking at those offerings and work out where to land, expand and scale, I would say land with Copilot readiness, move on to automation quick wins, and then get into augmentation of line of business applications and the service AI, the customer service AI that I talked about. I think that works well for new business. For existing organizations, often I think the starting point is really security and governance, because we have that credibility with an organization. That's what can Copilot see, and what are the policies that we need to put in place, is often the best place for existing businesses. And then moving on to role-based enablement, and then getting into the automation and line of business augmentation as you move forward. So I'll hand back to Eoin at this point to talk about the skills required to deliver on all this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nigel. And just following the kind of the logical flow, we talked about kind of the macroeconomic picture of the opportunity for partners, looking at the solutions that Microsoft brings to market, then how you can bake solutions around it. Now we want to think about how can you take where your existing business is and look at kind of what we call practice enablement, to really take advantage of this opportunity. And the key thing of this is that it isn't about becoming an AI partner. It's about taking, where your area of expertise is and really applying it to that market opportunity that we've talked about. There's those logical areas in the the top left quadrant, if you remember back a few slides ago, that will make sense for many people to start, and for others they might not start necessarily there, but we'll start where makes sense to their business. But typically speaking, if you look at the solutions we've discussed, and the offerings that partners can take to market, you can really break that down into technology pillars and capability layer. So the way I've approached this really is, if you look at the technology, fundamentally everything we've talked about so far sits atop of the M365 E5 security stack, and maybe some of the beyond E5 capability, which would be Purview, Entra, and Defender, which can be used to help organizations govern and secure the use of AI, whether that's Copilot for M365, Studio, or Foundry to a lesser extent, which would use Azure Purview. There's then the kind of the more Power Platform and Copilot Studio lens, which is for creating kind of customizable agents. And then there's the Azure end, which is looking at, how you can leverage Azure AI Foundry atop of Fabric to create those highly sophisticated and highly customized models. If we then look at the capability layer, which is really where partners are going to begin, monetizing the technology pillars, it really falls atop of four key areas, which is advisory and strategy. How are you going to use this stuff? What's the ROI? Security and governance. If you use AI, what are the security and governance kind of capabilities you need to wrap around it? Customization and implementation. All this capability is great, but we need to apply it to your organization and implement it. And then finally, adoption and enablement, which is, you've bought this capability, you've invested heavily in this capability, but now you need to think about how are you going to train your users on it and really, drive up adoption so you do actually hit those ROI metrics that we discussed in the advisory and strategy phase. And when we see partners building out this capability, many are looking at different kind of facets of what we have on screen, but broadly speaking, they're looking at doing it on a discrete project basis or an ongoing service. So an ongoing service for any of these may look like an AI governance lead or an AI lead as a service, offering in the advisory and strategy stage, looking at a purview-based managed service to govern some of the AI usage, or perhaps if you deploy custom solutions in an organization, how you can keep them up to date. But not all partners will approach this in the same way. And if we look at this, I suppose, and those slides are meant to build out, but what I'll do, I will highlight on the screen. So if we think about this from a partner perspective, if you're a Power Platform partner, the likelihood is you'll probably start with the Power Platform capability, the advisory strategy, the customization, the implementation, and the adoption and enablement. You may build this out, but actually the question you need to ask yourself is, will I build this out or will I partner with someone on this? Then if you're a typical security partner, the likelihood is that you start here and you probably do, these three facets, helping people define their security strategy, thinking about the security and governance of, AI holistically, and then implementing that capability so that it helps them achieve what they want. Broadly speaking, security partners don't do adoption and enablement, but as sensitivity labels becomes more of a part of, and data loss prevention becomes more of a part of this kind of broader AI solution, organizations do need to think about, well, how is it going to impact users if they see a sensitivity label they didn't see before, if they're prevented from doing something that they thought they could do. We don't want a lot of help desk tickets or people just circumventing it, right? So there's a few things that partners can think about of what they might do today, but where they might expand. And then finally, there's a kind of a new emerging category of partners that we're seeing they're basically focused around helping people understand what AI can do for them and how to adopted in their organization. So they're very much looking at this middle pillar here and completely, ignoring these bits. And what that really represents for partners perhaps on this call is well, if you're doing these bits here, how can you partner with someone who specializes in these areas as well, right? So there's an opportunity here to think about what is our logical starting point based on our area of expertise. What are those quick wins that Nigel talked about? But perhaps long term, what are those big bets? And what will we do? What will we do in the future? And what will we never do? And then where does partnering come into that? So as we think about this, there's 5 key questions that I think you should ask. And it's kind of in a hierarchical model of, firstly, where will we focus? What industries, what problems, what markets does it make most sense for us? If we're a security partner, we're probably not going to jump right into Azure AI Foundry. If we're a Power Platform partner, we're probably not going to go deep into the Purview side of things immediately. focus where we're strong and where we can make the biggest impact. But then how will we differentiate? What makes us different in a crowded marketplace? Is that industry? Is it solutions? Is it how we take those offerings to market, as a service or as a monthly fee, whatever that looks like? Then finally, what will we build? So Nigel talked about those offerings. So we've decided where we'll focus and how we're going to differentiate. Then how does this come together in packaged and solutionized offerings that we can, take to market in a really clear and clean way? Then based on those services that we want to build, what skills do we need? Are we, have a lot of expertise today in Power Platform, but actually we want to start building out, custom agents. And while we're not going to be necessarily a deep security partner, we do need an appreciation of Entra permissions. We need an appreciation of insider risk management. We need an appreciation of Purview DLP and sensitivity labels. Do we need to start hiring people, or do we need to partner with people if that's not something we fundamentally want to focus on? And the key thing is, how will this evolve over time? You may decide that we want to focus on a very distinct area and we'll begin to partner in the short term, but actually in a 3-year horizon, we're going to develop that capability in-house so we can deliver it end to end. But in the short term, it makes sense to partner with someone who has very complementary capability. We're a Power Platform partner, we don't know security. They're a security partner who don't know Power Platform. They focus on the exact same market. It makes sense for us to have joint go-to-market offerings, joint referral programs, and that'll work in the short term while we think about what the long term looks like. So in a nutshell, that's how we think that partners should be considering how they develop their business in alignment with this market opportunity. So Nigel, I shall hand back over to you.
Thank you, Eoin. And just we hope you found this an interesting and useful discussion today. You will get the slides. I mentioned that several times because there's quite a lot of detail and we've got to rattle through this. If after getting the slides you feel that it would be helpful to get Oka's help in defining this in your organization. So work out what offerings and what skills and how you're going to package them up and go to market. We have our AI practice builder product where we go through all this stuff. So we work on the offerings, we work on how you're going to take that to market. We look at the gap, not just in skills, but in from a sales and marketing perspective. And we define those metrics that are going to keep you held to account to make sure that you deliver on that. That's the format is that it's a one-day workshop that we then turn into a report and playback. And so if you would like help with some of this, then this is the method that we suggest from an Oka perspective. And then we're going to have to rattle through because we're over time already. Just very quickly wanted to say that the next Oka Partner Insights is looking at verticalization. That's on the 9th of April. If you found this one useful, then you might find that one useful too. Just pop it in your diaries. You will get there is a registration link. Also, next week we're doing a big go-to-market workshop with Arrow, which isn't 1 to 1:45. It's all day, but there's still some spaces left for registration there. That's in the East End of London.
Just to jump in there real quick, Nige, the registration's closed, but if anyone's really keen to come, if they can reach out to us, we'll see if we can get you in.
Fine, thanks for that, T. And finally, our next Partner Pulse will be at the Story Club, which hopefully many of you are getting used to as a venue now in Paddington, and that's on the 22nd of April. So thank you very much for your attention today. I knew we had quite a lot to get through, so with those people who've got questions, made points in there, we will get back to you individually. but we hope that you found that useful, and yeah, we look forward to hearing your thoughts in the future. And with that, we'll end the event.
Thanks, everyone.